Roll call vote. Zone 1.
Present.
Zone 2, I'm here. Zone 3.
Here.
Zone 4.
Here.
And the mayor is absent. He's out with COVID, so he's excused.
Need a motion?
Probably wouldn't be bad to do that.
May I make a motion that we excuse the mayor's absence tonight due to illness?
Motion to excuse Mayor Vernon Burton's absence due to COVID, second by Zone 3. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. If we can stand for the prayer and the pledge. And did you guys figure out with your competition?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering tonight. We thank you for the leaders of this city. We pray that you'd have your hand upon us, Lord, and help them to make wise decisions that benefit the city as well as the citizens that live here. We thank you for the many blessings that you give us and for the time that we can spend together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, tonight's meeting is to consider the proposed millage rate adoption, which has to be done before August 4th, which means it's got to be turned in by Friday because of it being on the weekend. I thought we did it at the last commission meeting, but apparently we didn't.
I spoke to Mr. Logan and he said he was getting there on Sunday.
Okay, well, we're hoping to get it done before then.
Yeah, just in case there's any typos or anything.
So, do you want to read the resolution or you want me to read it? Yeah, the staff has already been, did some adjustments on it and lowered it already, so.
And I'll read the resolution and then I'll go through that for Vice Mayor. Resolution 2024-04, a resolution of the City of Lake Helen, Florida, relating to the levy of a general municipal ad valorem tax for the 2024-2025 tax year, providing a rollback millage rate for general municipal purposes, establishing a proposed millage rate for general municipal purposes, establishing a public hearing, providing for notice to the Volusia County property appraisers, providing an effective date. Whereas the Volusia County property appraiser certified the 2024 taxable values for the general municipal purposes for the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen on August 1st, 2024. Whereas Section 200.065 2B Florida statutes require the City Commission to devise the property appraisers of the city's prior millage rate, its rollback millage rate, its proposed millage rate, at the time and the date and place at which a public hearing will be held to consider the proposed millage rate and the tentative budget. And whereas the City Commission has discussed the proposed tentative budget for the city in a budget workshop for its further consideration in accordance with controlling provisions of state law. Now therefore be resolved by the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen, Florida, that the prior year millage rate was 6.5 mils. The proposed millage rate necessary to fund the tentative general fund budget for the city's 24-25 fiscal year is 7.42 mils, which is a 24.58% increase above the rollback millage rate of 5.96 mils. A public hearing will be held to consider the proposed millage rate and tentative budget for the City of Lake Helen on September 12, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the says City Conference Hall, but it will be at Hopkins, Florida, with a second public hearing on September 26, also at 7 p.m. at Hopkins Hall at 192 Connecticut Avenue, Florida. The city administrator is hereby authorized and directed to provide a copy of this resolution to the Gleason County property appraiser for use in preparing the notice of proposed property taxes as required by Section 200.069 Florida statute, and to take any and all necessary administrative actions to implement the provision of this resolution, including but not limited to the execution of any Department of Revenue forms necessary to complete certification. The prior actions of the City of Lake Helen relating to the adoption of the city tax rate and the related budgetary activities are hereby ratified and affirmed. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage and adoption. This resolution duly passed and adopted on the first day of August, AD 2024 by the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen, Florida, at its regular meeting duly assembled. Where we started out, I'll give a little history. We have contracted finance director. I don't have that in-house. We received notification on June 28th of our valuation and the dates. And I sent that over, and I'm going to tell you that I missed the date for the deadline on August 4th. We set our entire budget process, and not once did the accounting office, who does our budget, notify us of this date. So that's why we are having to call a special meeting, and this should have happened prior. That's on me. I know that date now, and that date is already locked into a calendar. And our finance director, via contract, has been out of the country for 7 weeks on a sabbatical. So it's not a good time for someone to take a 7-week sabbatical in the middle of budget year. So I will be addressing those concerns and maybe having discussion with the commission involving actions once we get through the budget process on maybe what's the best way to deal with finance, accounting, and budgeting in terms of city. That said, we would have had a couple of budget work sessions before we would ever gotten to this meeting. Unfortunately, we don't have that time, so this is the first time we're meeting based on that deadline, because if we don't have that number turned in by Sunday, as Lynn said, which will really be tomorrow, we'd be in violation of Florida statute. Monday afternoon late, Roxanne and I received the final budget documents back from the accounting office that were sent over July 15th. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when we were notified that the millage was going to be 9.72 based on that budget. I've been in this business long enough to know that 9.72 is hard to swallow for anybody, and you better have some pretty good reason reasons and justifications. The only time I have seen that rate is when I took over at Mascot and they were on the verge of financial bankruptcy under Florida statute, and they had to raise their millage to get themselves out of debt, and the state would have stepped in and taken over. So what we did in the last 2 days, Rick,
Yeah.
Roxanne, Brandon's not here, but the chief was involved in that. We went back through the budget that I had sent out to you all, and as of today, we reduced that by $272,500, which would reduce what was the proposed millage rate of 9.72 to the recommended millage rate of 7.42 mils. And keep in mind, the millage rate that you're adopting tonight does not say that is the final millage rate that will be in September. What will happen is we actually have our first workshop next Wednesday. It carries over to Thursday, and as I said to you in emails, we'll schedule however many we need to. So adopting a millage rate tonight does not say that is going to be the millage rate. But from Monday through today, having it go from 9.72 to 7.42, at least I'm feeling we've already done some heavy lifting from staff side to get us to where we need to go. When we meet with the commission next Wednesday going through, there are going to be some tough decisions that you all may have to make policy-wise, depending upon what the goal is. Without going into a lot of detail, I'm just going to tell you that in the last 5 years, city administration and finance have not been transparent with the commission. You haven't had a balanced budget in 5 years.
I think I said that, right?
Yes, ma'am. And to follow that up, it's very likely that the millage at 6.50 really wasn't the millage that we should have had to fund last year's budget. So I'm not making excuses in terms of there. I didn't control that, but I'm transparent and I'm open. And my job is to make sure that you all have as much information as you can, so then you can make those decisions. So if the goal is to go from 7.42 to 6.5 or to the 5.96, that's the work that we will do together in those workshops. But I'll give it just a quick highlight of the 272,500. I know, well, hang on. I sent this out to you guys via email, but I also printed out bigger sheets. Because when you get my age, you need big paper.
I like to do that here. I'm so sorry. It's just this one.
Okay.
Thanks for
All right. So, in the legislative section, which involves the commission, the only change I made to the draft budget was your travel and per diem. I increased it to $10,000, which allowed $2,000 per person in the event that all 5 of you attended, like the Florida League of Cities convention. This year, only 2 members are going. I reduced that back to the $5,000 that it was in the previous budget, so I reduced the $4,500 that I had increased it by. Under executive travel, which would be for the city administrator to attend the Florida League of Cities or the Florida City County Managers Association meeting, I reduced that by $1,500, putting it back to what it was budgeted in 23-24. Legal was budgeted for $100,000, and based on the trend of the tracking we are now, we should come in under $75,000. So I reduced that line item by $25,000 to $75,000. General government, we eliminated a vacant position in City Hall. That was $51,434. I eliminated, and I'll explain this as I get through, I eliminated $70,000 that we held aside in a special line item for hurricane, and I'll explain that when we get through the process here. Public Works, has removed $90,000 for a 1994 truck replacement. We moved that to 25-26 capital year for consideration. Parks and Rec, last year was a $60,000 figure for a special events coordinator. That's been reduced to $18,000. Contracted services, Public Works has reduced $55,000, park maintenance and rehab, which would have been for the tennis courts and pickleball court, and also adding gutters. I think it's Melissa Park, was that?
Melissa Park and Blake.
And Blake. There was one increase that we did in here. I initially had $17,000 in for the stress buster and found a document today that says that the invoice next for this year is going to be $19,000. So I had to add $2,000 back to that line item. In the capital general fund, I had put in $25,000 for a new city sign. That sign now is changed by hand and labor. And so when you think of the time, the weather, and what have you, but considering where we're at, that as an item we can push to another year. So we're reduced to $25,000 there. So that's a total reduction of $272,000. The hurricane fund. The reason I'm recommending that you remove that. The city has $986.32 in a special reserve account. These are the proceeds from the sale of the electric utility. By city referendum, that money can only be used for natural disasters.
How much was that again?
$986.32. That's the current balance.
Because of the interest increasing.
Yeah, and in fact, I've given you a sheet in there. You can see it's increasing about $4,000 a month based on interest rate that those funds are drawing. So there's no reason, there's no reason to fund $70,000 out of taxpayers' funds when we're sitting on $900,000 that can only be used for emergencies. The other thing that I'm recommending, and where it factors into the millage rate, is you spent $190,000 out of last year's and previous year's budget for Nicole and Ian. That money should have come from this fund, and it didn't. So we'll be bringing back at a council meeting a resolution for you all to authorize $190,000 to come out of that fund to pay the city back for what you spent in tax dollars. We are working with FEMA, and things have been filed, and the referendum states that if you get money back and reimbursed, it goes back into that fund. So any money we get back from FEMA will go back into this fund. So we're not unprepared for hurricanes. We're not doing anything to put ourselves in a weakened position or in terms of that. We're just going to utilize the funds that were there. And that's the only reason, or that's the only thing they can be used for. So the combination of those changes, at least right now, allows us to get down to 7.42 mils on property. Just put a sheet together to give you an idea of first of all, how the millage is done, and it just took a typical average, or not average, because I don't know what the average is in Lake Helen. I took a $400,000. All right. Understanding millage rate, when we say 7.42, what that means is you take the property value, and right now there's a difference between taxable value and market value, so I'm just using a flat number assuming this was taxable value. So the millage rate is, a mill is $1,000. So a $400,000 house ends up being 400 units. And then you times that by the millage rate. The millage rate at 6.5 for a $400,000 house, again, this is no homestead exemptions, this is no $50,000 deduction, disabled deduction, whatever. This would be, if all of those things were done, your taxable value was $400,000. Last year, to the city of Lake Helen, your taxes were $2,600. If you don't change the 7.42, the taxes on that same $400,000 house will be $2,968. It'll be $368 a year increase, which is $1.008 a day. So just put it in context. So we hear the millage and we hear that number and we think of a big number, but, and I'm not saying a $398 or $368 increase doesn't affect people. I'm not saying that, but I'm trying to put it in the context so that the numbers are there that are understood. So if you adopt the resolution tonight at the 7.42, knowing we're still going to go through this budget with each other, and there are other areas that you all may recommend or decide that you want to put off or hold or to cut, then that just gives you an idea then of where we're going. So if we're taking it on a small scale, you can say we're basically looking to see how much of that $368 we can cut down from last year to this year. And I say that because it puts the numbers a little easier for people to understand, instead of saying, how do you take a $45 or a $4.7 million budget, and the average person kind of understand that and how that's going to hit them in their own pocket. So it's the $368 difference is what we're going to be working on over the next 4 weeks. Because we have to be done by the 22nd of August, because we have to advertise the hearing 20 days before. And so we already know when that date is. So if we're not able to figure out what we're cutting starting next Wednesday, we've got much bigger problems if we haven't got that done in terms of that time. Any questions? Vice Mayor, Commissioners?
I have a question based on our discussion. And you mentioned like the last 4 years, and probably go back 8 years, who knows, maybe we went 4 years when we were hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, that we're trying to now make up those dollars, or they're just going to vanish?
No, they were spent. Okay, so if somebody says to you, is the city in good shape financially? Yes, it is. I'm going to put some caveats with that. You have $1.6 million in reserves. Okay? My understanding is that was a larger number a few years ago. So what they were doing was using reserves to balance the shortfall. So right now we have 1.6 million. There is no law or rule or regulation what you should have, but in governmental terms for a city this size, 30% reserves is what's kind of recommended. A little more is not bad. So 30% is 1,350,000. So we're okay at 1.6, all right? Now the caveat is, half of that money was federal ARPA funds. Still, they're yours, and they're in the bank, and they're held there, but if you didn't have that ARPA funds, or those have been spent, we'd have $800,000 in the bank. So we're not talking about using any of that 1.6 million involving this. So even if you did want to, you could maybe bring it down to the 1.3 million. That's not what I'm recommending. So I'm not talking about touching reserves in terms of that process. So it's not like we've got a deficit somewhere we've got to make up, because the state doesn't allow you to do that. So as far as the auditors know, and I'll be honest with you, this would have been an auditing issue, because they would have seen that your revenues and your expenses match. So it's not like the auditor did something. They would have shown that the city of Lake Helen's audits matched in terms of their. It was just And I'm, you know, I'm not going to just say leave, because it could be that it even went back further. I will say, you know, Commissioner, on that, in talking at least with Zach, you know, the accounting gentleman, I don't know what or what have you, but there really was very little communication with the administrator and them in reference to the budget. And I think Rick, Rand is not here. Rick, what was the comment you gave me today?
This is the most I've ever been involved in a budget. It was just, he just give it to you. You can add something there if you want. Other than that, you got 5 minutes. Other than that, you're done. We don't want
And
to.
how many years have you been with the city?
Almost 27.
And you're much more of a budget expert today, aren't you?
Way more. Way more, I can tell you that.
So we're not catching up. It's not like we have to put money up and put money back. You have 1.6 million that's there. So we still got a safety net and we've got a cushion. Now knowing you've got 900,000, God forbid, now we're getting notices of a storm this potential weekend. It does look like a shift a little more to the Gulf, but the governor has declared a state of emergency. I just saw it at 5:54. Walking in here just in preparation, and Volusia County may make that decision by 11:45 tomorrow. So I'm comfortable now knowing what we have in front of us. We can't fix what happened the previous years, but we can, transparency-wise, as long as I'm sitting here, you will know where every dollar is. You will know if you're over budget, if you know if you're under budget. And whether I'm here or not, you all now know what questions you want to make sure whoever's sitting here answers for you and doesn't hand you a document anymore and tells you everything's okay, don't worry about it. Because, you know, I know there's an element where folks may turn around and say, well, the city commission voted on these. You're only as good as the information that the professionals give you. So if you're not given the right information, you can only make the best decision you can based on the information you've given. So,
And just as an added note, and you know, I'm following all of this, and I think that's what, you know, there's some other things that we've got to look at, but people look at me kind of strange because every time we start to vote on the big bills, I vote no, because I knew all along we were in serious trouble. So that's why I've always said it. And I just want that to be known.
Well, I actually wrote letters 3 years ago, before I became a commissioner, demanding an audit of our spending, and they blew me off. Because I said then, something don't look right. You take those bills and you add things up, and you add up your revenue, you're spending way more than what you're bringing in. So, I mean, 3 years ago I brought it to their attention, and they chose to ignore it.
Who is they? The commission or the?
I showed my ass at the commission meeting, and I wrote letters to Lee and the commission and the mayor. So my husband wrote a letter. There were several letters that came in about it.
So that we can expect that there will be changes and things will be heard.
well, I'd like to think that we've seen some changes, whether some people like them or not, since February 5th. I'd like to think you all are more informed, and you've been more in the loop, and you've received more information than maybe you received in the last 3 years. I love being a guy who can come in and have a little millage rate. 24 years of my career, other than those 2 years where it was in the 9s in Mascot to get them out of debt, I've been able to say that every budget has come in under budget, and we've either been able to lower the rate. We haven't always been able to take the full rollback. We've always been able to roll the rate. So I can honestly look somebody in the eye and say, as a city manager, administrator here, never raise taxes. I don't like this, but
You inherited it.
inherited it, but I also wasn't going to do the same old game and say, okay, we'll just pull some money out of reserves, don't tell them, and you have a balanced budget, and just move along and be happy.
So
So,
you've got to run it like a business.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not been run like a business, and I've checked with many cities that almost run like a business with a much lower millage rate. You know, I'm hoping that we're headed in that direction.
if I could on that, Lynn, just to when we do the comparison of the cities, though, we've got to be careful, because Lake Helen is unique, even in here in Florida, in the sense that it is a predominantly residential community. And you compare, like, let's say Lake Helen and DeBerry. DeBerry's got 2 power plants and 17. So when you look at all that commercial, that professional, and I'm not talking about Lake Helen running open, and I'm not talking about open the gates, but as long as you're predominantly residential, a residential community typically has a higher millage rate, because where they get their money is the residents, yeah.
No, I get that.
Yeah, because businesses don't get exemptions. They don't get the 50,000. They don't get the veterans, exemption where there's no taxes paid. I mean, there are homes in Lake Helen that pay 0 in taxes, but they get those benefits. That's not a negative. That's just the way the law is in terms that's set up. But so sometimes the comparison is a little bit harder, because when you can look at their mix, some may be fortunate enough, Winter Garden, where, well, I live here during the week, so I spend my money here in Lake Helen, but when I go home on the weekend, the millage rate is 1.35. If you look at the commercial growth and development and the expansion of Winter Garden going down to 429 to Disney, let alone my own downtown that I can drive into with restaurants and the shops, so they can afford to keep the homeowners' low rate down, because they're getting enough off the commercial and the business. So, but you are right, we've got to be aware, but we also know that there are some limitations that, if we don't get some diversification over the number of years, that burden will always remain on the homeowner.
Well, that's the truth. I think the problem with we're running like a business, and you start running it like a business, we need to put everything on the back burner. We do need commercial. We know that. And if there's a person living in Lake Helen that doesn't believe it, we just got to do it in the right way and make it right for the citizens. But we've never seen God to get there. Now, I'm new here, so,
We'll do it
what I
together.
understand, it's been the same story, the same line. That's what we're gonna do, and it never happens. So we're never gonna get commercial rights if we just keep sitting back and putting it on the back burner. That's our problem.
Heather, you've been sitting there quiet, taking everything in. You got anything to do?
I do, thank you. Obviously, we all feel that this is unacceptable. We all know this is unacceptable where we sit now. And I want to sincerely thank the staff for working diligently for the last few days in order to come up with a reduced rate. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation where we can continue to examine this and hopefully reduce even further. I know seeing this paper, I appreciate that, because I think it's easier for people to digest the actual dollar amounts, but seeing an increase of 24, whatever it was, 25% is still not palatable for me. I don't feel good about that number, just knowing that my next door neighbor may not be able to afford that possibly. I would like to find even better solutions than what's here. But that's not to say I don't appreciate the work that's been put in. I know that you all have had some sleepless nights and some serious work that's been put in, so I appreciate it. I would like to revisit the conversation. I know we said we were going to. I just really want to bring the point back that we need to examine how we got here. I'm not interested in pointing the finger. What I am interested in doing is finding a solution so that if the company that we currently use is problematic, then we need to examine that. If it's because of who was sitting in the space before you were here, then we've already solved that problem. But I really like to see that we move forward in a way that is productive and keeps our citizens protected from this type of issue moving forward. One thing I think we've been doing right, and I appreciate Lynn, because I know this has really been kind of her baby, and she's really harped on it quite a bit, is the reports that we have And I'd like to see those expanded. I know we talked at the last meeting, but I think that we do need to have those monthly, and they need to include all of the information, because what I have here in the last couple of years does not include all the information. And we've been making decisions with all the information. And monthly, we need to have that information in order to make the right decisions. Because when I'm looking at the bottom dollar from the reports that I have, and we're in good financial health, and if they're pulling it from an area that I'm not thinking we're pulling it from, that I'm not being told we're pulling it from, that is a problem. That is not a problem for me, that is a problem for every single one of these citizens that told us to come sit here. If we're making decisions out of ignorance, that's ridiculous and unacceptable, period. So, to recap, we really need to come back to the situation after we've had this come sit down, go line by line, try to reduce this millage rate further, but I want to revisit the conversation of how did we get here, not because of blame, but because of how to move forward. So, again, thank you for the transparency that you've had with our citizens. I appreciate that, and I know that our citizens like to know what's going on, and it helps me as a commissioner to give better information to the citizens through social media, through talking with them, and just in general through an agenda packet or through tonight's meeting, to have that information so that they can voice their concerns or their likes and dislikes for how we're going to move forward. So I'm looking forward to further meetings where we can look at every single line item and work on this together.
And as I said, just for the folks here in the room, it will be advertised. That will be next Wednesday. Seven to 9.
It's the 7th and the 8th of August.
7 to 8. Yeah, so we're doing 1 hour before the meeting, but we'll get into it, and it's going to be taking a ruler and going every line item just as we've done and said it. So, there's some items there, Rick will be there to tell you why he doesn't believe that should be cut, or Brandon, or vice versa, but that's why I say, to get a little further down, I need your help and partnership on that, because some of it's going to be policy decisions, because I can't just arbitrarily say, ignore that, or whatever the item may be. So we're all on the same page.
Well, and further having this conversation, now that we know, for me, this is a completely different picture than I had before. And so I feel it would be in our best interest to possibly add another meeting with longer hours where we can sit and really, because I think it's going to take longer than what we already have scheduled. So if that means that we need to make ourselves available for a longer period of time or for more days, I would 100% be willing to do that, because I'm going to do this on my own, for sure. I'm going to come to that meeting prepared like I always do. But I want to have that conversation with everyone in the city able to have their input as well. And if they have a concern about a line item, be able to speak on it as well. So I don't know how the rest of the commission is feeling about that, but I would feel strongly about adding another day or longer hours.
I think we're going to need it.
Yes, I don't think there's a way
Not
around it.
just 2 hours. Honestly, looking at what we've got right now, when we discussed it, now I want to know every line item.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated what you said in the last commissioners meeting about the charter. It was charter probably or something. When we have that meeting, please come to the table. So we can have a good solid meeting to move forward. That's not happening so far, at least not in my year and a half. And if we don't start moving forward, it's like I said a while ago, we're never going to get to commercials, we're never going to get a tax base that is necessary to help the citizens. And I can say, I told Jim this the other day, I honestly believe that we are in an economic crisis, as of today, my homeowners was dropped. 2 years, they kept increasing it, was paying $1,000. They dropped my homeowner's insurance, and I ended up having to pay over $5,000 to get a new policy for this year. Now, they gave me an $1,800 discount because of my age, part of it, but we cannot rate the citizens in the city. They're being raped in the retail stores. We're being raped, by big pharma. So at some point, we as commissioners have to start at the bottom and work up, and hopefully, maybe our congressmen, our senators might say, hey, you know what, they're on the wrong track.
And I think you're on to something, and I appreciate that, because that's where my thoughts are on, okay, this is only $368 proposed difference between the two millage rates, the proposed of 7.42 and the rollback, I think, right, of the 5.96. But given the current economic climate that we're in, and inflation rates being what they are, and everyone is feeling the effects of that. And it's not just me, it's every single person in the city is feeling that. And I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that I haven't exhausted every effort in order to minimize this impact. Because if that means the difference between my neighbor being able to eat and stay in their home, I could not live with that. So this is, and this, this is right. This is what we got into office for, and this is the most important thing we have to do in this job. So if it means 8 hours, so be it.
What we can do.
Also, that $365 is not going to be what everybody's is going to be. That's on our own value
For 400,000, right?
We can get in the 7 days and time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we're scheduled for the 7th and the 8th. I didn't expect that to be the end. I mean, I didn't propose the 12th and the 13th, but Roger and the mayor can weigh in on Thursday because they're going to the conference, and I guess I was just looking at their schedule on what they had to do in terms of that. But so if we're counting days, I'm just giving you, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 days separate from the 2 that we've already got set, that we have to have workshops.
Well, if we can stay in commission meeting till 11 o'clock, we can stay in a workshop till 11 o'clock.
I would have, nothing holds us to 9 o'clock on Wednesday.
And one other thing that I would just like to bring up that I've never seen before, but I guess different cities do things differently, but I do understand in the past that maybe you, Charlene, Nancy, who's attended all the meetings, and Kelly and Roger, it seems to me that the budget workshops came before. Everybody sat down maybe in May, and you had your workshop, and you worked towards whatever tax rate that you wanted. We seem to have it backwards. We like said, okay, let's go for 9 points, but we don't know why. I mean, really, when we get into a workshop, dear God, what if it happens that it's 12%? We can't go 12%, only 10, but we're still going to be in trouble. We should be working these workshops as early as possible, in my opinion.
We can do a preliminary workshop before June 1st. I think it's June 1st. Because June 1st is when the important information comes in for us to be able to work on the budget. So, but having the department heads and everybody else get with the city manager and go over what their wish list is for the budget should be done in April and May. And then we should start our budget hearings in June and figure out where we're going to get the money or what can we live without and stuff like that. And that's the way I believe it used to be done in the past. But we got to the point to where they didn't want us to know what was going on, so let's just have this quick little 30-minute meeting and shove this down their throat and let's vote on it, get out of here. And it's like, that ain't the way to do it.
I believe that we're going to be a laughing stock of the citizens. All of us who would like to have a legacy. You know, at the end of the day, the man who did these did, I really fast.
You can take and do a comparison between Deltona and Millage City to show what our relationship is, because Deltona was predominantly a residential community. Their citizens were paying out the union on their property taxes and everything, because they have restrictions in their bylaws and ordinances and everything over the years that wouldn't allow commercial development. Orange City looked at it and says, hey, we got all these main highways and everything, let's open our doors. All the commercial things you see in Orange City started requesting from Deltona. They built Orange City. Orange City blew up and expanded their commercials so much. And now then Deltona says, man, we're losing out on this. We need that commercial base. They eliminated all those things, and look what's happening in Deltona now.
Well, and that's the problem though, because really, who wants to go live in Deltona? Seriously.
It all depends. If I don't want somebody to find me, I'd live in Deltona.
Really?
Yeah, because nobody would be able to find me.
Oh. Will we come back?
But Lynn, going back to your point, I addressed that in the beginning, and maybe I didn't clarify in terms of there, that yes, there was a notification that came out that got passed on, and again, as Heather said, we'll have this discussion. 23 years, this is the only place I've worked where I didn't have a finance director in the office right next door. And that finance director's job is that budget calendar, those dates, you know, those things going out, department directors, reports that you ask for. I'm not emailing the company and waiting, and the idea of what it took to get the variance report. I mean, meaning, so there's some issues, as Heather said, we'll address once we get through this issue here, because I can assure you, knowing the dates and whatever wise, whether we have that contractor, whether we have a finance director, whether we have another contractor, we will be on that path. As Roger said, when you get your tentative in June, they give you your tentative evaluation June, they give you your final evaluation July 1st. There's usually very little change between the June 1st valuation and the July. So that's why you can set a tentative millage rate early, because you're basing it on the most recent data. And then yes, on that tentative, you still sit down and go through, you get the July one and see does it have a little change, and then you do your tweaks in terms of that process. So what you described and he described is exactly how it's supposed to happen.
Okay, so I have a question that's related but unrelated if we're through. If nobody has any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question.
We're having those public comment yet.
Okay, I didn't know.
One other thing everybody needs to understand is this is our first step in the budget process, is to get our tentative rate set so that we can start getting out the scissors and the knives and the machetes or whatever we want to cut what we can to bring it down to what the people would be reasonably welcoming to receive. So as we go through and get everything done, everything's going to work out right to as close as possible to what the citizens want. I know we're not going to be able to get a zero tax base, but that's what they want. But we can get it down low to what it is.
And to elaborate, it can't go up from here. It can
No,
only
it
stay
cannot
the
go
same.
higher than what we set tonight. It cannot.
We can reduce, we cannot increase.
And I gotta appreciate some people's stuff that they had on Facebook and everything else, because of what they did, and I'll recognize Todd for this one. I mean, he stirred up a lot of citizens with what he put on Facebook and everything, but look at what it does. It brings people to the meetings so they can voice their opinions, and that's what you want. So I got to hand it to Todd for doing that for us.
There's not many people here because it's supper hour.
Well, I mean, still, you just got more than what you'd normally get.
It's better than doing it during a business day like some cities do, so that it's very difficult for people to attend.
Agreed.
Now, do we do the citizens comment before or after we make the motion?
We need a motion first and then public comment.
I'm going to make a motion on the amount that you.
On the
On the resolution, if you want to keep it at the 7.42, or if you want it 7.
Yeah, I will make a motion to make it 7.0.
7.0. Second.
I'll second for discussion's sake. I'd like to know where this 7.0 came from and if there's, what went into consideration for that number, so that I feel more comfortable.
It's not 7.0
Oh, it was the proposed motion.
That was the proposed motion.
that you wanted to go 7.0.
Yeah. He said proposed 7.42.
Is there something that you're proposing that will take out of consideration in order to meet that number?
When we get to the budget meeting, there's quite a bit that I will take off.
Okay, so we have a number, some numbers, okay. I have not.
I don't agree with that because it needs, as a matter of fact, I would probably myself even go higher than 7.42, only because it can be reduced. It's not set in stone. So if we start at 7.0, then we have to, we can't go back up to the 7.42 that Jim is suggesting. So I don't know why we can't just go with the 7.42 because it can always come down from there. Just
And I thought about that, Charlie, but I think that once we get into the budget workshops and we start doing line item by line item, I think that we'll probably even hit a much lower number.
well, that'll be fine. I mean, that'd be great. But why not just go ahead and start here and then move it back down and then you're really dropping it down?
Might as well just start at 10 then.
That's, well, yeah. So,
And
Just saying.
hey, look, my taxes down, mine are going up.
One person at a time.
That's fine. Do whatever.
Okay. Get in, the citizens have to say. Now, Todd, I know you put yourself down here in the 6th spot, but you're the one who got this on the desk first. So you want to go first or you want to go 6th?
I'll go first. Good evening, Todd Preston, 352 Connecticut Avenue. I usually reserve my opinions and comments because this is a preliminary rate and it just needs to be set and it's just a cap. And I don't have the information in front of me. I'm going to review it to make an educated opinion or decision. So I just encourage you to set a rate. So for my 3 minutes, I would just speak generally that I'm here to represent myself as a tax-paying property owner and everybody else. Raising the property tax rate, although I know that it's a minor percentage of the overall revenue that the city takes in, based on everything it actually takes in, the city doesn't live off of that revenue when you look at all the numbers. But the people that pay it, it affects them way more disproportionately than it does the city. And I want to reiterate that when you say 742, 8, 9, 10 mills, the true tax rate right now, before you make any increases, is 22 mills. Because you have this magic word that replaces the word tax, and it's called a fee. So half of your budget and half of our costs is associated to fees. But another thing that people don't realize is you also tax us on the back end, which most people don't know about, because you charge utility companies a franchise fee, and that's a tax. That fee comes straight back to us. And nobody ever considers that when they say, oh, the tax rate's this, but we have to pay it. We pay it on our phones, we pay it on our electric bills, we pay it on our gas bill. It's a franchise fee. And when you combine all of that, you're way up there over 20 mils. And what you're doing is, again, I've been saying this for years, you're on a path to gentrify the city, and that's what's going to happen. People don't bring kids up that can afford to stay in the community. They can't afford it. And what happens when a person that pays for a house dies, gives it to their children without a mortgage, but they were only paying taxes on a small amount because the state had the foresight to protect them from municipalities and cap their tax at 3% a year. The child inherits the house, and all of a sudden they pay an $18,000 a year tax bill because it reverts to the going rate. So you have to put a lot of emphasis on what you're doing. I know it has to be done, but you got to understand and think about how are you going to affect the citizens. That's all. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say too, if I may, that we're looking at the tax rate here for the well, I can't even speak.
Non-ad-valorem.
I went to a procedure yesterday, it's messed up my head. But we still have the non-ad-valorem taxes that we're being hit with. So that's why I went for the 7% in hopes that when we get to talking about the then hopefully will be some place that's reasonable and comfortable. We've got to get comfortable at some point. Very good. Yeah, say it for me.
Kurt Siffin, West Delaware. Todd, I want to thank you for bringing it to our attention yesterday. We really appreciate you doing that, because once again, they slide these special meetings on the radar. I think this happened to us last year, if I'm not mistaken, 0-30, we had to have a special meeting. So that's something that I want to speak about. Jim, thank you for being transparent. I actually feel comfortable with you in that seat right now versus the other person that we had. So I just want to say thank you for being transparent. Thank you very much. You know, you talk about a $30 a month increase on a $400,000 home, which is 104 lots over in the woods, okay? And I'm not saying that to say anything special, but look at it this way. Everything has gone up, okay? That's $360 a year. You know, my gas prices have gone up, my food and everything else like that. So it's something that we, as residents of Lake County, have to look at. Then I want to thank you for the 7.0. Let's start at 7.42. That's my honest opinion. You know, you want to go to 8. I've never known a tax that politicians didn't like.
No, I said 7.
No, you said 8.
Well, I said.
All right, so I'm just saying, you said 8. You know, that really doesn't challenge you guys to get it down even lower, because hey, we can get 8% because that's our cap. Let's go for it. Okay. Heather, thank you for, you know, saying what you said about caring about the residents. That really means a lot to me. I really want you guys to take a hard look at this budget. Lynn, I'm going to say run as a business. I'm glad to see that we're going to start doing that. But just take into consideration that, you know, I understand about 30% of residents of Lake County pay no taxes, roughly. So that also hurts with the city as well. Todd, when you brought up utility taxes, thank you for mentioning that, because I was going to say the same thing. Is there a way the city can get away with the utility tax? You know, it's just nickel and diming everybody, if you really think about it. I think the county's planning on raising the millage this year.
They are.
Right?
Yes.
So now you got to add that in on top of it. It's going to get to a point where, yeah, $30 to you, $30 to the county, you know, it's just a little more about everybody gets more money. Like I said, there's not a tax that a politician doesn't thank you very much for, being transparent ahead of this week, but can we get these done before, 4 days before schools do going next year? So thank you.
And I'm not sure about the utility taxes. I think we're restricted on what we do with them by the state
Oh, I did have a
Public
question.
Service Commission.
I did have a question. David, please. So the, Jim, the $180,000 that's going to come out of the emergency fund back into the general fund, does that lower our tax liability? Can that go into, is that part of that 270,000? Okay, I didn't, when you run through the numbers. I
Yeah,
didn't-
what it does is on the revenue side.
Okay, so that's part of the 270 that you found. Okay, awesome.
I might get this wrong. Jokeel Abru.
That's close, it's Jackie.
Jackie.
Yeah.
Looks
Hi,
like an L in there, but I'm not sure.
okay. Hi, I'm Jackie. I live on Delaware Avenue in Lake Helen. And I have 3 things I want to say. I don't know who you are. You are Jim Gleason, and City Manager. Okay, hi, nice to meet you. You spoke to there being 900,000 in overages. And then I feel like you kind of contradicted yourself and said that we're going to use it for someone's salary. So I was wondering if you could just speak to that again and kind of clarify that for my little brain, because it didn't make much sense to me while you were saying it, but maybe I wasn't following along. I think we're talking about the hurricane fund.
Yeah, the hurricane fund.
Yeah.
There would be like this big fund we couldn't touch, but then you're like, well, we are going to touch it to do this. Did I not understand that right?
FEMA money. FEMA money.
FEMA money is going to be used for something else?
No.
No.
No, that, it was all in that discussion.
Oh, okay, okay. And then he mentioned 2 people's names. And I don't remember,
Cheryl Paul, maybe?
I don't even know who they are.
She doesn't work here anymore, that's why we're taking her out of the budget.
Okay, all right, yeah, there seemed to be.
Cheryl Paul. She's still in the, 51.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted a little clarification, thank you. And I love that you're gonna bring your budget. You said you're gonna bring your own budget to the meeting, but why isn't everyone on the committee bringing the budget? Because sometimes when I'm at work, if someone proofreads my work, I appreciate that. And everyone comes to the meeting with their own budget because someone's gonna miss a line. And then the last thing is Lake Helen is booming. It's booming, it's growing, right? Why, if there's all of these people coming to Lake Helen, why are we in the short?
Good question.
Because we are in the commercial.
It's residential.
It's residential.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Brock.
Peggy Braun, Main Street. Jim, just had a quick question, just for clarification. You mentioned something about a budget for a financial person. What do we pay the outside person?
Too much.
I think it's 6,600 a month.
So,
6,600 a
so
month.
what's that a year?
Almost 80.
It's around 70-some thousand dollars.
And what would a salaried person that does that job?
Well, to get a good finance person, you're probably talking 80 to 85.
Yep. Okay.
With
So it's
that.
not, it's a difference, but not a big
But
difference.
what I would say to you is, if you're comparing dollar to dollar, yes, it would cost you more. If you're talking about what that person can do on a day-to-day basis, adding a body here, so when I have 2 ladies in the office, and one's out with a death in the family, and we've got one person collecting utility billing, I mean, there are things that they would do in addition to the day-to-day financials, benefit administration, payroll, and things right now. So, I mean, while a position might cost you more money, the person does more than what we're getting in contracted services. Because they're not sitting there in that office doing our accounting day to day.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to ask all of the commissioners to seriously consider getting that person in here for obvious reasons that Jim just mentioned. To have someone at our fingertips that's proactive rather than all of you having to be reactive is going to be so great for us. Those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Wary?
So to speak to what Peggy just brought up, 2 city administrators ago, we had a fabulous finance manager named Jason Lawrence who decided to leave. They replaced him with Zach's company, if that helps. So we've had him before. They even got grants. He was very knowledgeable. He presented at all the meetings. It was fantastic. I want to ask Jim about something that he said. June 1st and July 1st, they issue this information. And at that time, on July 1st, weren't you thinking of a full rollback at that time, which would have been the 5 point whatever?
Yeah, that was before we had a budget assembly and all the department requests were turned in. That was the goal. So I'm going to tell you, having the finance director in-house and those numbers and them being available to me, I wouldn't have had to wait 2 or 3 weeks for that information to come back.
Okay,
That was my initial goal. Yes, ma'am.
How far are we to get to the 6.5 that we currently are?
Well, we're, 7.42 versus 6.5, so my phone's on a timer. Let me put it on hold.
You're talking about 150,000 more, 175,000?
Yeah.
Something like that.
One mil equals $190,124.
So hopefully we can achieve that during the budget.
So
And
you
get
go
to
from 7.42 to 7.65, or 6.50, you're, I'm just gonna say ballparking at 190,000.
Okay, so I personally would like us to see us get to 6.5. If you really cut it, trim it, see what's going on. Another thing I wanted to point out, the 400 valuation that you used based on last year, like Kirk said, the county has already voted. They have raised not only have they raised your taxes, before they did that, they raised the value of your properties that you're taxed on.
3%.
Yes, so we have that. We have the non-ad valorums that at the last meeting were raised individually a couple of $100s per property. So it's not just the $300 and some dollars, it's sizable, $500-600, and the people living on fixed incomes, they're really gonna struggle. So I have faith that you all will look at that and see what you can do. That's really all I had. I'm finished.
Jill Wilkins?
Jill Wilkins, 171 South Cravat Avenue. I'm also a business owner at 230 North Summit. So I wanted to speak on the commercial side, owning a business here in Lake Helen. My husband was born and raised here. He's 3rd generation. We were proud to own a business here in Lake Helen. The raise in millage does affect the citizens. It affects us in our home. We have a fairly new home, so obviously our value is a lot higher than it would have been had we built our home 15, 20 years ago. But our business does not see the same caps and exemptions as our home does. Just to kind of give you an idea, when the non-ad valorem increased, it increased our non-ad valorem by almost $5,000 a year on our business. And then the millage rate, obviously our taxable value, every year the county takes that liberty of a full 10%, it seems, to raise our value on our property, and then the millage is charged on top of that. I see this as an issue for bringing business to Lake Helen. We want to keep our businesses here, but at the same time, when you can go to another city and pay a lot less taxes to run the same kind of business, it's kind of hard to justify. So I just want to say we are fully prepared to pay our fair share of taxes for our business and the services, but just please keep in mind that you're not only dealing with the residential side, you're dealing with what little commercial is here as well. And we really appreciate you guys keeping us here and giving us a reason to stay here and serving our community. I also wanted to say, Jim, this is the first meeting I've been to since you've come on, and I appreciate you. This is probably the most information, like transparency, just the way that you explain things. Some meetings I would sit through and just had no idea what was going on. Couldn't wrap my head around what was being talked about, what was being said. I feel for the commission and what you guys were dealing with. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. So, that's it. Thank you.
My request is not like everybody else's. I am asking that when you prepare the budget for us to look at, I know you have an elaborate machine inside with huge big pieces of paper. I don't care how big it is, I can roll it up, but I want to be able to see the numbers. Could you please have staff legible? I have fought this for the past 10 years, and my eyesight's getting worse. So, and there's a lot of older people that want to look at these things, but I don't think that's asking too much. And it seems to be like a joke, you know, this little tiny piece of paper this big with numbers you can't even read. So, can that be achieved, do you think, Jim?
I took a magnifying glass last night. I couldn't read it with a magnifying glass.
I'm not an Excel person, but these are done for us and sent to us. And we have asked, and that's an issue that and like I said, the gentleman who is supposed to be our client representative has been gone for 7 weeks, and he'll be back on Monday. And that is one of the conversations, because even the budget that I've given them, preparation-wise, doesn't even match the variance report in format. There are different boxes with zeros and zeros and zeros on there that mean nothing. So there's a whole cleanup that needs to happen to that report.
Is he going to be at our meeting?
He should be at the workshops, yes ma'am. And I'm not an Excel person, meaning I know to read them and what have you, but I tried to make that bigger on my own screen.
If you need help, I've already got Excel classes for real, and I can help you.
All right.
More than
I have, we tried to make
if it's that simple, I will help you.
the budget variance report, I've been able to make it big, and give them to big numbers.
They can increase the font to make it a little bigger, and it'll increase the number of pages, which I would rather have more pages and be able to read it.
Does that come to us in an email?
Yeah.
If it
Does
is,
that come to us in an email? That's a problem, because even when I email Wayne stuff, he cannot convert it to the.
Well, you have to convert it.
We'll make an attempt. We'll make an attempt.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because it'll ask you to open it with Excel, and when you open it with Excel, you can adjust it.
Excel's not
One big letters, not big numbers, sir. Thank you.
I understand. Any
Also-
further discussion?
Yeah, I have another question. Are we also going to look at the revenue side, not just the expenditures? Because there should be some analogy done on that as
No,
well.
when they get their budget, and when we get Zach and we get set in time for the workshop, yes, we concentrate on the expense side, because that's what we control. But there will be revenue projections that is based on revenue sharing from the state, gas tax, sales tax, but those aren't things
Oh, I understand.
from a staff level. I'll give her an example. You know, I can't go to Debbie and say, get on the phone and start making phone calls and see if you can find people who pull building permits. I mean, so we're not kind of a revenue source. So that's why most of what we focus on is the expense side, because that's what we control day to day and going out. But the revenue needs to match what those expenses are. And I think as the gentleman said, or Todd said, you know, the property tax is not all of the revenue that comes in. A lot of our revenue, a bigger portion of it, comes from the state, in terms of shared revenue, mainly through sales tax, through excise taxes, through franchise fees that used to be paid on a local level, they're now paid at the state, and so they distribute that money out. So yes, there are projections that will be part of that work budget.
And one thing I'd like to point out too, that is the difference between a city and a business. We are not a revenue generator, and that's not our goal as a city. So we do need to have that information, I agree with you, because that's one of the things that we were talking about in that variance report, where's the, okay. But that is kind of the difference there, and that's why it looks like this. But I would like to see that as well, very much so.
Any other discussion? Okay, we got a motion on the floor from Linda Donato to accept resolution 2404 with the proposed millage rate at 7.0, seconded by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Said aye.
No,
Have you changed your mind?
All opposed?
I only seconded for
Yeah.
discussion.
Oh,
What was yours?
I said yes only because I thought that's what we were agreeing to do, but I really don't want to do it, but obviously yes.
Maybe we should have tried something.
Say no then, okay. I'm changing it.
Okay. Mine would just create a draw, so then.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we do it anyway.
before we go there, can I ask a question? If we're looking at 7.42,
As the tentative.
yeah, I got that. How much do we have to look at in slashing the budget to get it down to more where the citizens would like it to be versus 7%? Would it be, we wouldn't have to slash the budget as much if it's at 7.0 versus 7.42?
If we want to get to 6.5 though, we need to come up with $174,800 where that we can get rid of in order to meet 6.5. So to get to 9.6 would be even more.
Bring in a lot of red pens or red markers.
At 7.42, it's the 272.5.
We're gonna have to slash more off the
We're
budget
gonna have to come up with
versus-
this 175.
That's why I said 7, so we don't have to annihilate the budget.
We're still gonna annihilate the budget
Why,
because we
that's
got.
what I understand, but still, I think that we would be.
Okay, we need a motion to set a proposed millage rate.
Make a motion that we accept the, Resolution 2024-04 as stated, 7.42. And
And you got a
for
motion?
discussion, sorry, just for discussion, I'm not,
Let me get to the discussion.
okay.
Okay, we got a motion on the table by Heather to accept resolution 24-04 at 7.42 as stated, seconded by Charlene. Discussion.
Apologies, I thought we were there, sorry. I'm not opposed to the 7.0 or lower. I just would feel more comfortable once we've all had the discussion on which line items we'd like to make those cuts with. So I think we're more aligned than what is being stated here. I just would like to have that conversation first. That's all.
I get that, and I
Yes. And I appreciate where your mind is because I think that's where we need to be. So, thank you for that.
Any further discussion?
I have a question. Can I ask a question now?
Yes, sir.
Name, please, for the record.
Debbie Ritchie, 310 West Michigan. So, the way the budget is now, that you all have made the cuts already, based on that budget, it would take 7.42 millage rate to match that budget, right? So no matter whether you do 7.42 now or 7.0, you're still starting at that budget at the same spot. You're going to have to cut, correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So it does make sense to start at 7.42. Let that be your cap, because that's where your budget is right now. Okay.
Any further discussion? And we got a motion by Heather for resolution 24-04 to accept the proposed millage rate as proposed at 7.42, seconded by Charlene. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. I forgot to say that the previous motion failed, 2-1.
And now I have a question that's related but unrelated if we're ready for it.
No, because it wasn't a tie. It wasn't a tie. I was a tiebreaker. It wasn't a tie, so I didn't have to vote. If I would, I would have created a tie, or possibly.
Okay, so I have a question then about the current fiscal year. And this could be something that we bring back on Thursday if staff would feel better prepared at that time. But I would like to at least state the question. Where are we going to land and what do we need to do currently? I have some ideas that I'm prepared to go forward with, but we do not want to be the deficit and collect from general fund as we've done previously. So where do we feel we're going to land? And would you rather wait until Thursday to have?
I can tell you, based on the June report that will be in your packet on Thursday, in May, we were 9% over budget. June, we were at 7.42, so the trend is coming back. And some of that would be because, again, as I've stated, you pay a lease, and that lease is paid in the beginning of the year. It shows over, you're almost extending. So there are some areas where that gap is closing. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's going to equal out from there. But there are some issues and some things that we're talking about, some things that haven't been bought or haven't been spent yet. And I think that I'd be better having that conversation because Rick and I discussed some of that today in the department, and I mean in the sense of where he can tell you where he's at on some things, and then what do we not do then, you know, for the next 2 months. The police chief's not here, but the vehicle, you know, that isn't even on order yet, won't be until the next fiscal year. Two vehicles. So there's an issue of being able to make a decision on vehicles that could end up saving some money. While it won't get spent this year, and there are in that current budget, but there's an opportunity so there are some issues there that can be discussed, and we may be in a better position Thursday, because also that will help too, because we'll at least gone through some line items on the Wednesday and the Thursday before we get into the budget session.
Okay, so chewing on that for the next couple of days, I like to marinate, and I'll know that. So that's why I wanted to pose the question today, and also just put where my mind is. We may consider freezing all spending. That seems to be the most responsible thing to do. But once we have more information, more educated information, or transparent information, then we can obviously make that decision. But this is where my mind is.
Wayne said the same thing.
And would like to encourage you all to marinate on that thought.
Just one thing, you said freeze all spending. There's some spending that is mandatory,
Yes.
necessary, so you.
With exception for mandatory, yes. Sorry. But that's just a suggestion for right now. Obviously, we'll know more once we have better numbers and go through that process. So I just wanted to put that out so that we're all talking about the same thing and thinking on it over the next week. And again, thank you so much for doing this very openly and in a way that's easy to digest.
And I would like to follow up on that. How are the citizens going to be able to view the budget?
Well, when I made, we've got already a call scheduled with Zach on Monday, because we sent over our changes today, okay? So I don't have a fully changed budget, I've got what we sent, what we cut. So they got to send me back a fresh one, but I also want it in a different format than we've got, where you go through and you see sections that are just 0, 0, zeros and whatever. So we're having a discussion. When we get that, and it goes out to you, and I expect to have it no later than Tuesday, it will be posted on the website.
So I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, by law, we have to post it.
Well, I was just wondering when.
Yeah.
I think when you look at that, if you look at the columns, because the ones that have all the zeros are repeated.
I know, but
I think they changed the line numbers, the way they did the.
But I want it all cleaned up so it matches, so the budget matches the various reports, so that when you're looking at things, we're looking at a similar document year round. So Lynn, the goal is by having that by Tuesday, getting it distributed and posted on the website.
Rick?
If you're gonna talk about crazy stuff, we're in the peak, not even the peak of hurricane season. There's so much stormwater stuff I'm trying to do. I'm having sand delivered tomorrow to the question center for sandbags for possible flooding. I mean,
Well, and that's why
we are
clarifying with.
yeah, dishes that gotta be cleaned out, that have to be done. I mean, I get it on the regular, but for the storm prep, we just gotta
Right,
stay
there's
on it.
exceptions for that type of, we obviously need to keep people safe, so that would be an
Yeah,
exception.
I agree. I just want to make sure for the storm prep, I've already filled the generators, got most of that done. We still have things that have to be taken care of.
Right, thank you for your diligence on that, by the way. I brought the hurricane guy, I don't know if you saw that, and I did bring that to me. Thank you.
Any public comments? Hearing none?
What are we doing on writing grants? There's money out there to get from the state, federal government, and we're not even touching it. Deltona is set to get $4.2 million from the state. How much have we gotten this year?
This is actually, this is an agenda item that I put on under Commissioner Floyd Bison next week, so.
I won't be here.
And there's also a contract with a company that is on the agenda for Thursday, that while it falls more on the infrastructure, but they're a company that has a component of the company that identifies the grant. So when they tell you there's a problem, they also tell you how much money they can get you to pay for the problem. And that the commission will be able to evaluate that Thursday on whether or not they want to go forward with that company.
Because there's money out there for stormwater right now. I know we have a huge stormwater issue, and instead of trying to get the residents to fund it, if we can get our own money that we pay in, state taxes and federal taxes, let's do it. I mean, it's there. It's free money. We can get it.
I'll give you just a quick example. This is a preview of something that they're going to get Thursday in their packet. I was notified, well, I found out maybe a month and a half ago, there's a federal mandate by October, we're supposed to have a survey done of copper and lead pipes. The federal mandate. That should have been something that should have been addressed.
How long ago did we know about it?
I'm just telling you what I found.
I know, I'm just being facetious because of the past that we had.
But because of working with certain vendors and a company that's working in Orange City and I've worked with in previous, not only did they tell me that it's due, they went ahead and put us in for $150,000 of a grant to cover the cost of the project without even knowing they might even be under contract. So we still have to budget the $150 because you have to pay it, because how grants work is when you spend your money, you then submit in your documentation and then you get your money back. But that's just one example of a different engineering firm than we dealt with before, who just engineers and tells you how much a project's going to cost. This is one that will engineer and tell you what the project is, and then, hey, we have a dedicated staff that knows how to get federal and state money for infrastructure. Hopefully the commission will take a good look at that. Please?
Yeah, I know when the federal government came up with that mandate on removing all lead pipes and copper pipes and stuff in the United States, that they were mostly because of what happened in Detroit. They never said that there was a mandate on doing a survey on it also. Like he said, we're finding out stuff. So
you know, once the survey's done, you know what's going to happen next. And then the government's going to say, just what Roger is, you've got to remove them. So if we're going down that path, then maybe we're working with somebody that can say, okay, now we know how much that is. How much money can we get to pay for that?
Absolutely. Okay. All right, great. I mean, it's something that I've been here 3 years and I've been asking for 3 years more.
Yay, Jim.
All right.
anybody else? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you for the comedic relief.
I know.